Hi, my name is Bart Van Rooyen, and I am the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Corner Brook and Labrador. And thank you for joining me today in my address to the young people of our diocese. And yet last week I was talking about heroic virtue. I think to accentuate the point a little further, today I want to talk to you about Saint Therese of Lisieux. She's a relatively recent saint in the history of the Church. She lived about 100 years ago, and her desire from a very young age was to become a saint. But you know, how do you become a saint? I mean, how do you actually accomplish such a feat? And she felt quite stymied by the whole idea. She didn't know how to proceed. Now, Saint Therese of Lisieux was loved very much as a child, especially by her father. Many say she was his favorite, and so at times she was a little bit spoiled, and at times also focused a little bit too much on herself as a result. But she continued to have this inward struggle that she wanted to become a saint. But whenever she looked at the saints, they seemed so far above her, so different from her. She seemed so ordinary. And so she continued that struggle until one day she heard the words of St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, specifically the last part of chapter 12 and the beginning of chapter 13, where St. Paul speaks about the more excellent way, that he was going to show you a more excellent way. And of course, then he starts speaking about love and what love is. In today's world, we hear so much about love, but sometimes it's not always the most inspiring. When it comes to St. Paul's words, it really speaks about a self-emptying and a willingness to do that we do for others, to literally live our lives for others. And when St. Therese heard this passage, she realized in her being that that is what she was called to do each and everything in her life with love. If she could just add that one ingredient, then indeed, she would be well on her way to loving God and loving her neighbor. And so that's what she did. She lived in community life, and she had chores to do. One of those chores was to do the laundry. And whenever she did the laundry, she did it with love, meaning she folded things and did it with care, praying for the people who might be using these clothes. When she went to the dining room, the refectory it's called in Life in Common, she would make sure that in her relations with the other sisters, that she would do so with the utmost of care and concern, meaning that there were always those, and she had them too in the community, that are a little harder to get along with. And those especially she tried to focus on with that attentiveness and for that care and concern. And so in these little ways, she grew in her in leaps and bounds, you might say, in her spiritual life. Today we call her spirituality and her way of approaching the world the little way, meaning it is through little actions, through small gestures, by making those daily attempts and moment by moment attempts, really, because it's really being in the moment, the very pathway to greater relationship with God and with others. So I hope you learn more about Saint Therese of Lisieux, and maybe she wrote an autobiography. You may want to read that at some point in your life, but that you too feel inspired. God does place this call within us to become saints, but it's often a matter of, well, how? And how do I go about this? And Saint Therese of Lisieux shows us a way, an example for us to follow, to draw nearer to Jesus and to the kingdom. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll join me again next week.